The bass thumped against my ribs, each beat matching my racing heart as I scanned the crowded nightclub. Sweat prickled along my hairline, my fingertips slick against the untouched glass of vodka soda. The ice had long since melted, diluting the drink I'd barely sipped all night. Through the haze of blue and purple lights, I caught a glimpse of him, Ryan, moving through the crowd like a shark circling its prey. 3 months since I'd fled our apartment with nothing but a backpack and the bruises blooming across my ribs. 3 months of looking over my shoulder, changing my number, and sleeping with a chair propped against my motel room door. 3 months, and he'd found me again. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Mia shouted over the music, her words slightly slurred from the 2 pink cocktails she'd downed since we arrived. I leaned closer to her ear. "He's here." "Who's—" Her question died as she followed my gaze. "Shit, Emma. We need to go." My legs felt bolted to the floor as Ryan's eyes locked with mine from across the dance floor. The familiar cold smile spread across his face, the one that never reached his eyes, the one I'd seen right before his fist connected with my stomach the last time. "Emma, now." Mia tugged at my arm, but it was too late. Ryan was cutting through the crowd, his tall frame easily pushing past the dancers. The exit seemed miles away, blocked by a sea of oblivious bodies moving to the beat. My breath came in short gasps, the beginning of a panic attack clawing at my chest. "The VIP section," Mia hissed, pulling me toward the velvet ropes sectioning off the elevated part of the club. "My cousin knows one of the security guys." We moved against the wall, keeping to the shadows as Ryan's gaze swept the club. I could feel him hunting me, that predatory focus I'd learned to fear during our 2 years together. Mia flashed a smile at the bulky security guard who lifted the rope without a word. Small mercies. The VIP section was darker, less crowded. Crystal bottles with sparklers illuminated private booths, where beautiful people lounged with an air of casual indifference. I felt painfully out of place in my simple black dress and drugstore makeup. "We'll hide in the bathroom until we can get you out the back," Mia decided, her hand firm around my wrist. That's when I saw him by the ropes. Ryan had spotted us. The security guard was distractedly checking his phone, and Ryan was talking to him, probably spinning some lie about looking for his girlfriend. "He's coming," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Mia, he's going to—" "This way." She pulled me deeper into the VIP section, but I knew it was useless. There was nowhere to run in this velvet-lined trap, and Ryan had already slipped past security. The music seemed to fade as panic took over, narrowing my vision to a pinpoint. Then I noticed the booth in the darkest corner. 3 men in expensive suits sat there, an air of danger surrounding them like a physical force. The center figure commanded attention despite his stillness, broad-shouldered with raven black hair swept back from a face that seemed carved from marble. Even seated, his presence dominated the space. His eyes, dark and watchful, caught mine for a brief moment, and something electric passed between us. I felt stripped bare, as though he could read every fear and secret with that single glance. Then his attention shifted past me, narrowing slightly. He'd noticed Ryan approaching. Without thinking, without planning, I broke away from Mia and rushed toward the stranger's booth. Pure survival instinct drove me forward, some primal part of my brain recognizing safety in this dangerous man's orbit. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling as I approached his table. "My ex, I couldn't finish the sentence, but those dark eyes understood immediately. The man didn't speak. He simply extended his hand in a gesture so subtle it could have been missed, yet carried the weight of absolute authority. The 2 men flanking him shifted almost imperceptibly, creating space, wordlessly inviting. I heard Ryan's voice behind me. "Emma, there you are, babe." Without hesitation, I slipped into the booth and found myself directly on the stranger's lap. His body was solid beneath mine, radiating heat through the expensive fabric of his suit. The faint scent of cedar and something darker, something exclusive, filled my senses. I stiffened, suddenly aware of what I'd done, trapped between 2 different kinds of danger. A strong arm wrapped around my waist, not restraining, but supporting, possessive yet oddly gentle. "Trust me," the stranger murmured against my ear. his breath warm, his voice like velvet over gravel. "I won't let him hurt you." Something in his tone made me believe him completely, despite every warning bell screaming in my head. Ryan approached the table, his friendly smile doing nothing to mask the fury in his eyes. "Sorry to interrupt," he said with forced cheerfulness. "But my girlfriend and I had a little argument, and she's being dramatic. Emma, let's go." I felt the stranger's body tense beneath mine, his arm tightening fractionally around my waist. When he spoke, his voice was deceptively casual, yet carried an undercurrent of steel that sent shivers down my spine. "I believe the lady is comfortable where she is." Each word was measured, precise, as if carefully selected from a vast vocabulary of threats. Ryan's smile faltered. For the first time, he seemed to truly register who he was addressing. The color drained from his face as his eyes darted between the man holding me and his two silent companions. "There's been a misunderstanding." Ryan backpedaled, his confidence evaporating. "I just wanted to make sure she got home safe." "She's safe." The declaration was absolute, brooking no argument. "Alessio," he added, addressing one of his men without taking his eyes off Ryan, "make sure this gentleman finds the exit." The taller of the two men stood, and though he never touched Ryan, never even made an overt threat, Ryan retreated like a scolded dog. I watched in stunned silence as Alessio escorted him out, amazed at how quickly my tormentor had been reduced to nothing. I realized I was still perched on a stranger's lap, his arms still curved possessively around me. I should have been terrified, and part of me was, but an odd sense of security washed over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. "Thank you," I whispered, attempting to slide off his lap and into the booth beside him. His arm remained firm, keeping me in place. "Stay." "It wasn't a request. What's your name?" "Emma," I answered, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. "Emma," he repeated as if tasting the word. "I'm Dante. No last name." He didn't need one. The way his men deferred to him, the way the entire VIP section seemed to orbit around his booth, I knew exactly what kind of man held me. The kind my mother had warned me about. The kind that ruled the shadows of this city. "You're shaking," Dante observed, his thumb tracing small circles against my hip. The gesture was oddly soothing despite its intimacy. "I'm sorry for involving you," I said, acutely aware of Mia staring wide-eyed from across the VIP section. I panicked. "Don't apologize." His voice was softer now, meant only for me. "That man, your ex, he hurt you?" It wasn't really a question. I nodded slightly, unable to voice the humiliation, the fear, the helplessness of those final weeks with Ryan. Something dangerous flashed in Dante's eyes, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. His free hand rose to brush a strand of hair from my face, the touch feather-light, despite the calluses I felt against my skin. "He won't trouble you again." The simple statement carried such certainty that I believed it instantly. I should have been horrified by the implication, should have protested or clarified that I didn't want Ryan hurt, just gone. Instead, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, a burden I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. Mia approached cautiously, visibly intimidated. "Emma, are you okay?" Before I could answer, Dante spoke. "Your friend is safe with me." His tone was polite but dismissive. "You can leave your number with Marco. We'll ensure she gets home safely." Mia hesitated, clearly torn between fear of the situation and concern for me. I gave her a small nod, trying to convey that I was okay. "I'll be fine," I assured her. "I'll call you tomorrow." After Mia reluctantly left her number with the remaining bodyguard, Dante finally allowed me to slide into the seat beside him, though his arm remained around my shoulders, maintaining contact. The booth felt like a separate universe, isolated from the pulsing club beyond. "Tell me about him," Dante said, his attention fully focused on me. It was disorienting, being the sole recipient of such intensity. I stared at my hands, now clasped tightly in my lap. "There's not much to tell. We dated for 2 years. It was good at first, then it wasn't. And no one helped you." There was something cold in his question, a judgment not of me, but of a world that had failed to protect. I hid it well, I admitted, and Ryan is charming when he wants to be. People see what they expect to see. Dante nodded, understanding completely. And you ran. 3 months ago. I've been staying at motels, working cash jobs. I thought I covered my tracks. People like him. They're obsessive. Predictable. Dante's contempt was evident. Weak men who prey on those they should protect. The irony wasn't lost on me, being comforted by a man who undoubtedly had blood on his hands, whose very presence radiated controlled violence. Yet somehow, I felt safer with him than I had in years. "Why did you help me?" I finally asked, meeting his gaze directly. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that I dared to question him. Then the ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Because you chose me." 3 simple words, heavy with meaning I couldn't fully decipher. Had I chosen him? In that moment of panic, facing Ryan's approach, I'd instinctively sought shelter with the most dangerous person in the room. What did that say about me? "I should go," I said, though I made no move to leave. The thought of returning to my dingy motel room, alone with my fears, was suddenly unbearable. "Where?" Dante asked. "Back to hiding, looking over your shoulder?" I had no answer. No plan beyond survival from one day to the next. "Stay," he said again, but this time it carried a different weight. Not a command, but an offer. "I have properties throughout the city. Secure, private. You would be safe there until you decide your next move." Alarm bells rang in my mind. I'd escaped one controlling relationship only to consider placing myself under the protection, the power, of a man who was clearly dangerous in ways Ryan could never approach. "Why would you do that?" Suspicion crept into my voice. "You don't know me." Dante studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Consider it a mutual arrangement. Your ex saw you with me. Word will spread. Having a woman under my protection sends a message. So I'd be, what? A prop? A possession?" The words came out sharper than intended. "An association," he corrected smoothly, "temporary and beneficial to us both. You gain safety. I gain, let's call it, an enhanced reputation." It was transactional, cold even. No false promises or manipulations, just a straightforward exchange. Still, I hesitated. What would be expected of me? His dark eyes held mine. Your presence. Nothing more. I didn't believe him, not entirely. Men like Dante didn't offer sanctuary without expecting something in return. Yet the alternative was returning to my life of fear and hiding, always one step ahead of Ryan, until the inevitable day he caught me again. 1 week, I said, surprising myself with the decision. "I'll stay somewhere safe for 1 week. Then I decide what comes next." Dante inclined his head, the barest hint of satisfaction in his eyes. 1 week, he agreed. As he gestured for his remaining bodyguard, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with a different kind of devil. I'd escaped the frying pan and walked deliberately into the fire. But fire, at least, kept the wolves at bay. The car that carried me away from the club was unlike any I'd ever been in, a sleek black Bentley with windows tinted so dark they appeared solid from the outside. The interior smelled of premium leather and subtle cologne, the seats soft as butter against my bare legs. Dante sat beside me, a careful distance between us now that we were no longer playing a role for Ryan's benefit. Or perhaps we were still playing roles, just different ones. Marco drove silently, his broad shoulders nearly filling the front seat. Alessio had stayed behind at the club, for reasons Dante didn't explain, and I didn't ask. The city lights streaked past the windows, and I realized I had no idea where we were going. The thought should have terrified me, but exhaustion had replaced fear. I'd been running for so long that surrender, even temporary, felt like relief. "You're quiet," Dante observed, his voice breaking the silence. "I'm still processing tonight," I admitted. "Everything happened so fast." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Second thoughts?" "Several," I said with unexpected honesty, "but my alternatives aren't appealing." A hint of amusement touched his lips. "Pragmatic." "Desperate," I corrected. There's strength in recognizing when to accept help, Emma. He spoke my name with a certain cadence, giving it weight beyond the simple syllables. Pride gets people killed. The car turned onto a tree-lined street of elegant townhouses, then slowed before a 4-story brownstone set slightly back from the others. No external sign marked it as special, yet it exuded quiet luxury. "We're here," Dante said as Marco came around to open my door. I followed Dante up the steps, noticing the subtle security cameras tucked into the ornate exterior moldings. The heavy door opened before we reached it, revealing a slender woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into an immaculate bun. "Sophia," Dante greeted her, his tone warm in a way I hadn't heard before. "This is Emma. She'll be staying with us for a time." The woman's keen eyes assessed me without judgment. "Of course. The blue room is prepared." "Thank you." Dante turned to me. "Sophia manages this household. Whatever you need, she'll provide." Sophia offered a small smile. "You must be tired, Miss Emma. Would you like something to eat before you rest?" The unexpected kindness nearly broke me. I couldn't remember the last time someone had offered me food without expecting something in return. "Just water, please," I managed, suddenly aware of how parched I was. "I'll show you to your room," Dante said, his hand coming to rest lightly at the small of my back as he guided me up a curving staircase. The house was a study in understated elegance, hardwood floors, tasteful art, muted colors that somehow managed to feel both masculine and inviting. Nothing ostentatious or gaudy, nothing that screamed illicit wealth, just quality and taste that spoke of old money, not street fortune. The blue room, as Sophia had called it, was on the 3rd floor at the end of a hallway. Dante opened the door, and I stepped into a space larger than the entire motel room I'd been calling home. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, draped with linens in varying shades of blue and cream. A sitting area with a small sofa faced a fireplace, and double doors opened onto what appeared to be a private bathroom. "This is too much," I whispered, overwhelmed by the luxury after months of survival. "It's secure," Dante replied, as if that were the only consideration that mattered. He moved to the window, drawing back heavy curtains to reveal a small balcony. "There's only one entrance to this room, that door. The balcony doesn't connect to any others. The windows are bulletproof." I raised an eyebrow at that last detail. "Are you expecting gunfire?" "I expect everything," he said simply. "It's why I'm still alive." A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Sophia entered with a tray bearing a crystal carafe of water, a glass, and a small plate of what looked like shortbread cookies. "I thought you might want something light," she explained, setting the tray on a side table. "There's a robe and nightgown in the bathroom. Fresh clothes will be here in the morning." "Thank you, but I don't need—" "It's already arranged," Dante cut in smoothly. "Sophia has excellent taste. Trust her judgment." The older woman smiled. "If there's anything else, just use the house phone by the bed." She quietly withdrew, leaving me alone with Dante. The reality of my situation suddenly hit me. I was in a stranger's house, a dangerous man's private domain, with no phone, no money, no way out if this turned ugly. Yet every instinct told me I was safer here than anywhere I'd been since leaving Ryan. "You're overthinking again," Dante observed, those dark eyes missing nothing. "It's a lot to process," I said, running my fingers absently along the carved wooden footboard of the bed. "I don't usually jump into strange men's laps and then go home with them." A ghost of a smile. "I should hope not." The possessiveness in those 3 words sent an unexpected shiver through me. I turned away, moving to the window to gather my thoughts. The city sparkled beyond the glass, beautiful and remote. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked, needing some framework, some structure to cling to. Dante approached, stopping just behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence without him actually touching me. "Tomorrow you rest. Recover. The day after, if you wish, Sophia will take you shopping for anything you need." "I can't afford—" "Consider it part of our arrangement," he interrupted. "Your visible association with me requires a certain presentation." I turned to face him, finding him closer than expected. "So I'm to be your kept woman? Your trophy?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "You're to be safe, Emma. The rest is window dressing." Why does my safety matter to you? I pressed, needing to understand his motivation beyond the vague explanation he'd offered at the club. The truth, please. Dante studied me for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. When I saw you tonight, you were hunted, cornered. Yet instead of surrendering, you sought the most dangerous ally available. His voice lowered. That kind of survival instinct. It's rare. Valuable. I'm not an asset to be acquired, I said, lifting my chin despite the flutter of fear in my stomach. No, he agreed. You're a woman who deserves better than what life has given you so far. He stepped back, creating distance between us. Rest, Emma. Lock the door behind me if it makes you feel safer. No one will disturb you. With that, he left, his footsteps nearly silent on the plush carpet. I stood frozen for several seconds before moving mechanically to the door and turning the heavy lock. The sound of the bolt sliding into place was reassuring, though I suspected it would provide little barrier if Dante truly wanted entry. The bathroom was as luxurious as the bedroom, marble and chrome, with a shower large enough for 3 people and a soaking tub positioned beneath a window with privacy glass. True to Sophia's word, a silk nightgown and matching robe hung on a hook, tags still attached. They were exactly my size. That detail should have disturbed me more than it did. I showered for what felt like hours, letting the hot water wash away the club, the fear, the memory of Ryan's face. When I finally emerged, wrapped in the softest robe I'd ever worn, I felt almost human again. The nightgown slipped over my head like water, cool against my skin. Despite the exhaustion weighing my limbs, sleep proved elusive. I lay in the massive bed, staring at shadows on the ceiling, trying to make sense of the bizarre turn my life had taken. Just hours ago, I'd been a nobody, a waitress hiding from her abusive ex. Now I was in a mansion, under the protection of a man who commanded fear with just a glance. A man who had helped me without demanding anything immediate in return, which only made me more suspicious of his ultimate intentions. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were a confused jumble of dark eyes and gentle hands with hidden violence beneath. Morning arrived with soft light filtering through curtains I didn't remember closing. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't place where I was, the bed too comfortable, the silence too complete to be my motel room. Then memory flooded back, the club. Ryan. Dante. A gentle knock at the door startled me fully awake. Miss Emma? Sophia's voice, calm and proper. Breakfast will be served in half an hour, if you'd care to join. I cleared my throat. Thank you, I'll be down. You'll find clothes in the wardrobe. The bathroom has everything you should need. Her footsteps retreated, leaving me to investigate the wardrobe she'd mentioned. Inside hung several outfits, all with tags removed but clearly new. Jeans that looked my size, sweaters in muted colors, even underwear still in packages. The invasion of privacy, someone determining my size, selecting intimate items, should have felt violating. Instead, it struck me as efficient. Clinical almost. I chose the simplest outfit, jeans and a cream-colored sweater, and dressed quickly, running my fingers through my hair in lieu of a proper styling. The woman in the mirror looked better than she had any right to. The dark circles under my eyes less pronounced, my skin with a hint of color returning after my first decent sleep in months. Finding my way downstairs proved easier than expected. The scent of coffee guided me to a sun-filled dining room, where Sophia was arranging a setting at one end of a table that could seat 12. Good morning, Miss Emma. She greeted me with a warm smile. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in a long time, I admitted. And please, just Emma is fine. She nodded, pouring coffee into a delicate cup. Mr. Dante had business this morning, but asked me to make sure you were comfortable. Eggs? Toast? Just toast, thank you. I settled into the chair she'd prepared, feeling out of place in this formal setting. Sophia, how long have you worked for him? Her hands didn't pause as she buttered toast. I've managed this household for 15 years, since Mr. Dante's father was alive. So, you know what he does? I asked carefully. Sophia placed the toast before me, her expression serene. I know he is a man who protects what's his, who honors his obligations. Her eyes met mine directly, and who does not bring trouble to this house. The gentle warning was clear: don't ask questions you don't want answers to. I'm not here to cause problems, I assured her. I just need some time to figure out my next steps. Of course. She softened slightly. Eat your breakfast. Then perhaps you'd like a tour of the areas you're welcome to use. Those last words caught my attention. Areas I was welcome to use, implying there were parts of the house expressly off limits. I nodded, nibbling at the toast that suddenly tasted like cardboard in my mouth. After breakfast, Sophia showed me the main floor of the house, a formal living room I doubted saw much use, a study lined with leather-bound books, a smaller sitting room that felt more lived in, and a kitchen that would make a professional chef weep with joy. The second floor held what she called family rooms, more bedrooms, though it was clear Dante lived alone. The third floor, where my room was located, also contained a small library and sitting area. For your comfort, Sophia explained. She didn't mention the fourth floor at all. You're welcome to use the garden, Sophia continued, leading me to French doors at the back of the house. They opened onto a walled courtyard, surprisingly lush and private, despite being in the heart of the city. It's beautiful, I said, stepping out into the autumn sunshine. A wrought iron table and chairs sat beneath the dappled shade of a maple tree, turning brilliant red with the season. Mr. Dante rarely has time to enjoy it, Sophia said with a hint of sadness. Perhaps your presence will encourage him to slow down occasionally. The comment struck me as odd, as if she expected my stay to be more than the temporary arrangement Dante had described. Before I could question her, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Sophia straightened imperceptibly. That would be Mr. Dante returning. Come, we should greet him. We found Dante in the foyer, handing his coat to a young man I hadn't seen before. He looked different in daylight, no less commanding, but somehow more human. His suit was charcoal gray today, his tie the color of burgundy wine. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps, at finding me still here. Emma? He said my name like he was claiming it. I trust Sophia has been taking care of you? Yes, she's been very kind. I shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny, aware of how ordinary I must look in the simple clothes. We were just touring the garden, Sophia explained. Miss Emma has had breakfast and seems well rested. Dante nodded. Good. I have some matters to attend to, but I'll join you for dinner. It wasn't a question or an invitation, simply a statement of fact, unless you'd prefer to dine alone. The small concession to my preference surprised me. Dinner would be nice, I said, unsure why I felt a flutter of anticipation at the prospect of spending more time with him. 7 o'clock, he confirmed, then turned to Sophia. The packages I ordered? Arriving this afternoon, she replied efficiently. Excellent. He returned his attention to me. I took the liberty of having some additional items sent for you, practical necessities. Before I could respond, he excused himself, disappearing into what I assumed was his study. The door closed with a definitive click. Sophia patted my arm gently. He works too much, she confided, as if we were old friends discussing a mutual concern. Come, I'll show you the library. There are many books to keep you occupied until dinner. I followed her back upstairs, my thoughts swirling. In less than 24 hours, I'd gone from hunted to housed, from desperate to... what? Protected, certainly, but at what cost? The gilded cage was still a cage, no matter how kindly the jailer. Yet as I settled into a comfortable window seat in the library, a novel open in my lap, but my eyes on the garden below, I couldn't deny the creeping sense of security. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't calculating escape routes, wasn't counting the dwindling dollars that stood between me and homelessness. If this was captivity, it was the most gentle imprisonment I could imagine, and if Dante was my captor, he was nothing like the monsters I'd feared. That thought troubled me most of all. The practical necessities Dante had mentioned arrived in the afternoon. 6 large boxes delivered by men who moved with the same watchful efficiency as Alessio and Marco. Sophia supervised the delivery, directing the packages to my room with a quiet authority that brooked no argument. Mr. Dante thought you might prefer to unpack privately, she explained, leaving me alone with the mysterious boxes. The first contained clothing, casual pieces in my size, but of a quality I'd never been able to afford. Jeans that probably cost more than a week's wages at the diner, sweaters and soft cashmere. even a dress that looked suitable for a dinner party. The second box held shoes, practical boots, elegant heels, comfortable flats. By the third box, I was overwhelmed. Toiletries, makeup, even a hairdryer superior to any I'd ever used. The fourth and fifth boxes held more clothing, outerwear, sleepwear, even workout clothes. But it was the final box that left me speechless. A cell phone, a laptop, and an envelope. Inside the envelope, I found a bank card with my name on it and a note in elegant masculine handwriting. For your independence. The accounts are in your name only. D. My hands trembled as I stared at the card. Independence was the last thing I'd expected from a man like Dante. Control, yes. Possessiveness, certainly. But this? This was freedom. The means to leave if I chose to. I powered on the phone, finding it already activated and loaded with contacts. Sophia, Dante, even Mia, though I had no idea how he'd obtained her number. The laptop was similarly prepared, a new email address using my name, basic software installed. Was this generosity or calculation? A genuine desire to help, or a more subtle form of control, creating a debt I could never repay? I couldn't decide, and the uncertainty gnawed at me as I organized the new possessions, folding clothing into drawers that had been empty that morning. At 6:30, I showered and changed for dinner, opting for a simple black sweater and dark jeans rather than the more formal options. I applied minimal makeup, more from habit than vanity, and pulled my hair into a loose knot at the nape of my neck. The woman in the mirror looked like me, but somehow different. Rested, less haunted. The bruise that had lingered on my collarbone for weeks was finally faded to nothing. At precisely 7, I made my way downstairs, following the soft glow of lights to the formal dining room. Dante was already there, standing beside the table now set for 2 at one end. He'd changed from his business suit to dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow managed to make him look both more approachable and more dangerous. "Emma," he greeted me, pulling out my chair. "You look well. Thank you for the everything," I said awkwardly as I sat. "It's too much. It's what you need." He took the seat adjacent to mine, rather than across the table, close enough that I could catch the subtle scent of his cologne. "Did the phone and laptop meet your requirements?" "They're far more than I require," I admitted. "I don't understand why you'd give me the means to leave when you went to such trouble to bring me here." Dante's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "I didn't bring you here to trap you, Emma. You're not a prisoner. Then what am I?" "A guest," he replied smoothly. "Under my protection, but free to leave when you choose." Sophia entered with a bottle of wine, saving me from having to respond. She poured 2 glasses of ruby red liquid before retreating to the kitchen. I took a sip, finding it rich and complex, probably worth more than I used to make in an entire shift. "Tell me about yourself," Dante said, watching me over the rim of his glass, before Ryan. The request caught me off guard. I'd expected questions about my ex, about what he might do next, not interest in my past. "There's not much to tell," I said with a small shrug. "I grew up in a small town about 3 hours from here. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. I dropped out of college to settle their affairs and never went back. No other family?" I shook my head. Only a distant aunt who made it clear she wasn't interested in taking on a nearly grown niece. I worked odd jobs, moved to the city for better opportunities, met Ryan at the restaurant where I was waitressing. I paused, remembering how charming he'd been at first. He was a regular customer, always requested my section, left generous tips. He seemed kind. "They usually do, at first," Dante observed, no judgment in his tone. "When did it change?" "Gradually. So slowly I barely noticed." I stared into my wine glass, watching the liquid catch the light. First, it was checking my phone, then criticizing my friends, my clothes, how I spoke to other men. By the time he first hit me, I was already isolated, dependent on him financially. He'd convinced me to quit my job, that he'd take care of everything. Sophia returned with our first course, something delicate involving scallops, momentarily halting the conversation. When she withdrew, Dante continued as if there had been no interruption. "Yet you left." I nodded, picking up my fork without really seeing the food. He broke 2 of my ribs. I realized the next time might kill me. I forced myself to take a bite, the flavors barely registering. I waited until he left for a business trip, took what cash I could find, and ran. "Brave," Dante commented. The word so unexpected I looked up sharply. "Desperate," I corrected again, echoing our conversation from the previous night. "Survival and bravery often look identical," he countered. "Many in your position never find the courage to leave." We ate in silence for a few moments, the quiet comfortable rather than strained. Sophia cleared our plates and brought the main course. Roasted duck with vegetables arranged so artfully they resembled a painting. "What about you?" I ventured, surprising myself with the boldness. "Your family?" If he was startled by my question, he didn't show it. "My father built a business empire. My mother died when I was young. I have a younger sister who lives in Europe, by choice and my insistence." "You sent her away?" I asked before I could stop myself. "I keep her separate from my affairs," he clarified, his tone making it clear this was a decision not open for debate. "Family is leverage, a vulnerability I can't afford." Yet he'd brought me, a stranger, into his home. The contradiction wasn't lost on me, but I didn't dare point it out. "And Sophia mentioned your father is no longer living?" Something hardened in his expression. "He was murdered when I was 23. A rival organization thought his death would weaken our position." The coldness in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. They were mistaken. I had no doubt what happened to those responsible, and found I couldn't muster much sympathy for them. The realization disturbed me. Was I already becoming desensitized to the violence that surely surrounded this man? "I'm sorry about your father," I said instead, focusing on the human aspect of his loss, rather than what followed. Dante studied me, seeming to weigh my sincerity. It was a long time ago. The conversation shifted to lighter topics for the remainder of dinner. Books we'd read, places we'd visited. Dante was surprisingly well-traveled, knowledgeable about art and literature in a way that suggested genuine appreciation rather than performance. By dessert, a crème brûlée that melted on my tongue, I found myself relaxed, almost enjoying his company. It was disconcerting how easily I could forget what he was, who he was. After coffee, Dante escorted me to the sitting room where a fire had been lit against the autumn chill. We sat on opposite ends of a leather sofa, close enough for conversation, but with a careful distance maintained between us. "Your ex," Dante said after a moment, his tone shifting back to business. "Tell me what he might do next." The abrupt change of subject jolted me. I don't know. He's never found me before. Usually I'm more careful." "He's resourceful," Dante observed. "Or he has help. Either way, he's persistent. He always said if I ever left him, he'd find me." I admitted, the memory sending a chill through me despite the fire's warmth, that I belonged to him. Something dangerous flashed across Dante's face. "You belong to yourself, Emma, no one else." The conviction in his voice startled me. For a man who clearly commanded others, who exuded ownership and control, it was an unexpected sentiment. "Ryan doesn't see it that way," I said softly. "To him, I'm property that was stolen. Then he needs to be corrected." The casual way Dante said it, as if educating my ex about ownership rights was as simple as changing a light bulb, sent another chill through me. "I don't want him hurt," I said quickly. "I just want him to leave me alone." Dante's expression was unreadable. Sometimes the only language men like that understand is pain. "Please," I insisted, leaning forward to emphasize my point. "I don't want that kind of solution. I don't want to trade one violence for another." He studied me for a long moment, then inclined his head slightly. "As you wish. But understand that restraint is a courtesy, not a limitation. If he threatens you again, if he comes near you, all promises are void." I should have been horrified by the implicit threat. Instead, I felt oddly protected, knowing there were boundaries to Dante's restraint where my safety was concerned. "Thank you," I said simply. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 10, breaking the tension that had built between us. I stood, suddenly aware of how intimate the setting had become. Firelight, wine, deep conversation. I should get some rest. I said, needing space to process the complex emotions swirling inside me. Dante rose smoothly. Of course. I have meetings early tomorrow, but Sophia will be available should you need anything. He hesitated, then added, the car and driver are at your disposal, should you wish to go out. Marco is discreet and extremely capable. The offer of freedom, even chaperoned freedom, surprised me again. Thank you. I might take you up on that. He walked me to the base of the stairs, maintaining that careful distance. Good night, Emma. Good night, Dante. His name felt strange on my lips, intimate in a way I hadn't intended. As I climbed the stairs, I could feel his eyes following me until I turned the corner and disappeared from view. I spent the next day exploring the house more thoroughly, discovering a small gym on the second floor and a collection of vinyl records in a cabinet beneath the stereo in the sitting room. Sophia kept me company at lunch, sharing carefully edited stories about the house's history and Dante's childhood. He was always serious, she told me as we ate soup in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room. Even as a boy. Always watching, always calculating. Was his father in the same business? I asked delicately. Sophia's expression remained neutral. The family has many interests, she said diplomatically. Mr. Dante expanded some and refined others after his father passed. In the afternoon, I took Sophia up on her offer to show me how to use the elaborate espresso machine in the kitchen. We were laughing over my failed attempt at creating latte art when the front door opened with more force than usual. Seconds later, Dante appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression tight. Sophia, I need the room, he said, his tone clipped. The housekeeper immediately excused herself, touching my shoulder lightly as she passed, a gesture that felt like both reassurance and warning. What's wrong? I asked once we were alone, anxiety creeping up my spine at Dante's unusual demeanor. He crossed to the window, looking out at the garden for a moment before turning to face me. Your ex has been asking questions about you. About me. About us. My stomach dropped. How do you know? I have people who listen, eyes and ears throughout the city. He moved closer, studying my reaction. Ryan approached one of my businesses yesterday, asking staff if they knew a woman matching your description. Today he was seen talking to individuals known to work for a rival organization. Oh God, I whispered, sinking onto a kitchen stool as my knees weakened. He's going to get himself killed. That is becoming increasingly likely. Dante agreed, his voice cold. Not by my hand, he added, seeing my expression. But by stirring these particular waters, he risks attracting the attention of people far less inclined to honor your wishes regarding his welfare. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly chilled despite the kitchen's warmth. What do we do? We? Dante raised an eyebrow, something shifting in his expression. You still consider this our problem to solve together? I dragged you into this, I said, guilt washing over me. I made you a target. To my surprise, Dante laughed. A genuine sound I hadn't heard from him before. Emma, men have been trying to target me since I was 23. Your ex is an annoyance, not a threat. He moved closer, resting his hands on the counter on either side of me, not touching, but effectively boxing me in. My concern is for you. His proximity sent my pulse racing, though whether from fear or something else I couldn't tell. What do you suggest? 2 options, he said, his voice low and intense. First, you could leave. New identity, new city, new start. I have connections that could make you disappear so thoroughly your ex would never find you. The offer was tempting, a clean slate, a chance to rebuild without looking over my shoulder, but it meant running again, being alone again. And the second option? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dante's dark eyes held mine. Stay. Not as a guest, but visibly as mine. Make the association real rather than rumored. Your ex needs to understand that pursuing you means challenging me directly. A calculation even desperate men reconsider. As yours, I repeated, the implication sending a confusing mix of alarm and anticipation through me. What exactly would that entail? Public appearances, accompanying me to certain functions, being seen entering and leaving this house. He paused, gauging my reaction. Nothing more intimate than you're comfortable with. But the world would need to believe there is more between us than convenience. A performance, I clarified. Initially, he conceded. Though I won't pretend I find the arrangement unpleasant. The admission hung between us, charged with possibilities neither of us had acknowledged until now. I should have been frightened by the intensity in his gaze, should have chosen the escape he offered. Instead, I heard myself say, "I'll stay." Something flickered in his eyes, satisfaction perhaps, or relief. "You understand what this means? What people will assume? That I'm your mistress, your possession." I met his gaze steadily. "Yes, I understand. Not my possession," he corrected, his voice softening. "Under my protection. There's a difference." "Is there?" I challenged. "From where I'm sitting, both mean my life is dictated by a man's whims." His jaw tightened. "If that's what you believe, then you should take the first option. I have no interest in replacing one cage with another." The vehemence in his tone surprised me. "Then what do you want from me, Dante? Really?" For a long moment, he didn't answer, studying me with an intensity that made my skin warm. Then he straightened, stepping back to restore the distance between us. "I want your trust," he said finally. "The rest will follow, or it won't." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He checked the screen, his expression hardening. "I need to take this. We'll continue our discussion at dinner." With that, he strode from the kitchen, already speaking in rapid Italian to whoever was on the line. I remained perched on the stool, my thoughts in turmoil. I'd just agreed to pose as the girlfriend of a man who clearly operated outside the law, a man I barely knew but who had shown me more consideration in 2 days than Ryan had in our final year together. The rational part of my brain screamed that I was trading one dangerous situation for another, but something deeper, something that recognized the fundamental difference between Ryan's possessive violence and Dante's protective strength, had already made its decision. I was staying. God help me, I was staying. Dinner that night was a tense affair. Not because of any conflict between us, but because of the shift in our arrangement. I'd changed into one of the nicer outfits Dante had provided, black pants and a forest green blouse that somehow made my eyes look more amber than their usual brown. An unconscious effort to look worthy of being on his arm, perhaps. The thought troubled me as much as it intrigued me. Dante arrived late, still on his phone as he entered the dining room. He gestured apologetically as he finished his conversation, speaking in that fluid Italian that made even business sound like poetry. When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted, the weight of whatever empire he commanded evident in the tight lines around his eyes. "My apologies," he said, taking his seat beside me. "A situation required my attention." "Is everything all right?" I asked, genuinely concerned despite knowing I had no right to details of his business. He offered a ghost of a smile. "Nothing for you to worry about." Sophia served a delicate pasta dish, clearly having held dinner until Dante's arrival. She moved efficiently around us, pouring wine, ensuring everything was perfect before disappearing back to the kitchen. "We need to discuss how we proceed," Dante said once we were alone, "if we're to present a convincing association." I twirled pasta around my fork, needing the distraction. "You mean our backstory? How we met?" "Among other things." He took a sip of wine. "The simplest stories are the most believable. We met at Vero, the club where you found me. The rest is no one's concern." "How long have we been seeing each other?" I asked, falling into the construction of our fiction with surprising ease. "Recently enough that it's still new, established enough that my interest is clear." He studied me over his wine glass. "A month, perhaps." I nodded, committing the detail to memory. "And my background?" "People will ask questions. You're from out of state, recently moved to the city. The rest, your education, your family. Those details can remain true. The fewer lies we construct, the less chance of inconsistency." The methodical way he approached our deception was both reassuring and unsettling. I wondered how many lies he maintained, how many versions of truth coexisted in his world. "There's a dinner tomorrow night," Dante continued. "A restaurant opening. The owner is an associate who's been trying to go legitimate. Your first public appearance as mine would make a statement." The possessive term sent an unexpected warmth through me. "What should I wear?" "Sophia has arranged something suitable." He hesitated, then added, "If you're uncomfortable with any of this, Emma, say so now. Once we step out that door together, certain assumptions will be made, certain risks become attached to you." The warning was clear. By aligning myself publicly with Dante, I would be seen as valuable to him, which made me both protected and a potential target. "I understand," I said quietly. "I've made my choice." Something like approval flashed in his eyes. "Good. After dinner tomorrow, we'll assess whether your ex has received the message. If not, more visible measures may be necessary." I pushed my pasta around my plate. My appetite suddenly diminished. "How did you learn about Ryan asking questions?" Dante considered me for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "One of my men recognized him from the club, followed him, observed him approaching staff at establishments I'm known to frequent." "You had him followed?" The thought was simultaneously disturbing and reassuring. "I protect my interests, Emma." His tone was matter of fact. After his behavior at the club, I wanted to know who I was dealing with. "And what did you discover?" I asked, not entirely sure I wanted the answer. Dante set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "A man with gambling debts to dangerous people. A history of complaints from former girlfriends that mysteriously disappeared from police records. An apartment lease co-signed by a detective in the organized crime division." His expression hardened. "Your ex has protection, Emma, which explains why he felt comfortable approaching businesses connected to me." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "Ryan knows police officers. He's an informant," Dante clarified. "A rat feeding information to a detective named Harrison in exchange for looking the other way on his own indiscretions." My hands began to tremble. All those times Ryan had mentioned his friends on the force, his confidence that no one would believe me if I reported the abuse. It hadn't been empty threats. "That's why you didn't just have him handled," I realized, the euphemism awkward on my tongue. "It would attract police attention. It would be complicated," Dante acknowledged. "Not impossible, but messy in ways I prefer to avoid." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine in an unexpected gesture of comfort. "But make no mistake, Emma, if he threatens you directly, no connection will save him." I should have been horrified by the casual way he discussed potentially killing someone. Instead, I felt a perverse sense of security, the certainty that whatever else Dante might be, whatever lines he might cross, he would not allow harm to come to me. "Thank you for telling me the truth," I said, turning my hand to briefly squeeze his before withdrawing. The rest of dinner passed in lighter conversation. Dante asking about the books I'd found in his library, me inquiring about the vinyl collection I'd discovered. By dessert, the tension had eased, replaced by a comfortable exchange that felt surprisingly normal given the circumstances. After dinner, Dante led me to his study rather than the sitting room. The space was masculine and elegant, with bookshelves lining 3 walls and a massive desk positioned to face the door. He gestured for me to take one of the leather chairs positioned near a chess set while he poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Bourbon," he explained, handing me a glass, my father's preference. It grew on me. I accepted the drink, the glass cool and heavy in my palm. "Did you learn the business from him?" Dante settled into the chair opposite mine, his posture relaxed but still maintaining that innate alertness I was coming to recognize as permanent. "He taught me what he could. The rest I learned through necessity." He took a sip of his bourbon. "My father believed in education, both traditional and practical. I have degrees in business and law, though I've never practiced the latter conventionally." The revelation surprised me. Somehow I'd assumed his path had been entirely shaped by the underworld, not academia. "You're wondering how a man with my education chose this life," he observed, reading my expression with unnerving accuracy. "I'm wondering if it was a choice at all," I countered. A hint of appreciation flickered in his eyes. "Perceptive. My path was predetermined in many ways, but I've shaped it to my own design." He gestured vaguely around us. "My father operated in shadows. I prefer a balance, legitimate businesses alongside the other ventures, less risk, more stability. A criminal enterprise with good accounting," I said, before I could stop myself. To my relief, Dante laughed, That genuine sound I'd heard only once before. Exactly. The world is changing. Adaptability ensures survival. I took a small sip of the bourbon, the liquid burning pleasantly down my throat. Is that why you're helping me? Adaptability? His expression turned serious. No, Emma. That comes from a different imperative altogether. Before I could ask what he meant, he changed the subject, gesturing to the chess set between us. Do you play? Badly, I admitted. My father taught me the basics, but I never had the patience for strategy. A shame, Dante commented, idly adjusting one of the carved marble pieces. It teaches valuable lessons about sacrifice and foresight. I prefer games where luck plays a role, I said. Chess is too predetermined. If you're skilled enough, if you can see far enough ahead, the outcome is almost inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Dante contradicted quietly. Even the most carefully constructed plans can be derailed by a single unexpected move. His eyes met mine over the board. By someone willing to risk everything on an impulsive choice. The weight of his words hung between us, and I knew he wasn't talking about chess anymore. I had been that impulsive move in his ordered world, the unexpected variable when I'd chosen his lap as sanctuary from Ryan. Do you regret it? I asked. Getting involved in my problems? No. The answer came without hesitation. Do you regret coming to me? I considered the question honestly. No, I should, probably, but I don't. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his eyes, a tension releasing I hadn't realized was there. We finished our drinks in comfortable silence, the unspoken connection between us deepening in ways I couldn't yet define. When I finally rose to retire for the night, Dante walked me to the base of the stairs, as had become our routine. This time, however, he caught my hand before I could ascend, his touch feather-light but arresting. Tomorrow will change things, he said quietly. Once we're seen together publicly, there's no going back. You'll be linked to me in ways that carry consequences. I know, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. Sleep well, Emma. He released my hand, stepping back to restore the careful distance he always maintained. Good night, Dante. I climbed the stairs, feeling his gaze on me until I turned the corner. The dress Sophia presented the next evening was unlike anything I'd ever worn. A deep burgundy silk that draped like water over curves I'd forgotten I possessed after months of stress and inadequate food. The neckline was modest but elegant, the hemline respectable but flattering. When I emerged from the bathroom after Sophia had helped style my hair into loose waves, I hardly recognized the woman in the mirror. You look lovely, Miss Emma, Sophia said with genuine warmth. Mr. Dante will be pleased. I smoothed my hands over the silk, nervous despite myself. It's been a long time since I dressed for an occasion. The first of many, perhaps, Sophia commented with a knowing smile. Come, he's waiting downstairs. Dante stood in the foyer, his back to the stairs as he checked his watch. When he turned at the sound of our approach, his expression changed in a way that sent heat blooming across my skin. His gaze traveled slowly from my face to the dress and back, appreciation evident in his dark eyes. You are stunning, he said simply. He himself was devastating in a tailored black suit with subtle charcoal pinstripes, his tie matching the burgundy of my dress so perfectly. I knew Sophia had coordinated our appearance down to the last detail. Thank you for the dress, I said, feeling unexpectedly shy under his scrutiny. It's beautiful. The dress is merely fabric, he replied, offering his arm. You make it beautiful. The compliment was delivered with such sincerity that I couldn't dismiss it as mere flattery. I placed my hand on his arm, the solid warmth of him beneath the expensive suit, reminding me of that first night in the club when I'd sought refuge in his lap. Marco waited with the car, opening the door with a respectful nod. As we drove through the city toward the restaurant, Dante briefed me on who we might encounter. The owner, Vincent, is an old associate attempting to establish legitimate businesses. His restaurant is excellent. He poached a chef from Milan. Dante's hand rested casually on the seat between us, close to mine, but not touching. You may encounter some of my business associates. Some are aware of our arrangement, others will assume what they will. How should I behave? I asked, wanting to play my part correctly. His lips curved slightly. Be yourself, Emma. You needn't pretend affection or deference. Simply being at my side is enough. The restaurant was in the most exclusive part of the city, its facade understated but elegant. As Marco opened our door, Dante stepped out first, then offered his hand to assist me. The moment my fingers touched his, something shifted between us. A subtle claiming, a statement to the watching world. Cameras flashed as we approached the entrance. Local society photographers documenting the restaurant's opening. Dante's hand moved to the small of my back, a warm presence guiding me through the door held open by uniformed staff. Inside, the space was a study in modern luxury. Soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, tables spaced for privacy. A burly man with a surprisingly gentle face approached immediately, clasping Dante's shoulder with evident affection. "Dante, you honor us." His accent was thickly Italian despite what I guessed were years in America. His gaze moved to me with open curiosity. "And who is this vision?" "Vincent, this is Emma," Dante said, his hand still at my back. "Emma, Vincent Russo, an old friend and the owner of this establishment." Vincent took my offered hand, bowing over it with old-world charm. "Any friend of Dante's is family here," he said with a warm smile. "The best table is waiting, of course." As Vincent led us through the restaurant, I was acutely aware of eyes following our progress. Curious, speculative, assessing. Women in designer dresses leaned to whisper behind manicured hands. Men in expensive suits nodded respectfully to Dante while giving me evaluating glances. Our table was indeed the best, positioned to see the entire restaurant while offering privacy from neighboring diners. Dante held my chair, a gesture that seemed natural rather than performed. "Is this what your life is always like?" I asked quietly, as Vincent departed with promises of special treatment. "More or less," Dante acknowledged, his attention seemingly on the menu, though I knew he was aware of everyone in the room. "You're uncomfortable with the attention." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Not uncomfortable, just unused to it. With Ryan, I was expected to be invisible unless he wanted to show me off. Something darkened in Dante's expression. "That will never be the case with me. When we're in public, you are my equal. Remember that." The conviction in his voice warmed something inside me. Before I could respond, a waiter appeared with champagne. Compliments of the house. As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing into the role of Dante's companion. The food was exquisite, the wine perfectly paired. Between courses, Dante introduced me to various associates who stopped by our table, some clearly legitimate businessmen, others with that same dangerous edge Dante himself possessed. I was midway through a delicate dessert when I felt Dante tense beside me. Following his gaze, I saw what had caught his attention: Ryan, standing at the bar, staring directly at our table. My breath caught, panic rising in my throat. "What is he doing here?" "Making a very poor decision," Dante said softly, his voice calm despite the danger I sensed coiling within him. He placed his napkin beside his plate and stood. "Excuse me for a moment." "Dante, wait." I grasped his wrist, suddenly terrified of what might happen. He covered my hand with his touch reassuring. "I'm simply going to have a conversation, Emma. Nothing more." He bent down, his lips close to my ear. "Trust me." With that, he moved through the restaurant toward the bar. I watched, heart hammering, as he approached Ryan. There was no confrontation, no raised voices, just Dante speaking quietly, Ryan's face draining of color. After less than a minute, Ryan nodded stiffly and left the restaurant, Dante's gaze following him until he disappeared. When Dante returned to our table, his expression was once again composed, showing nothing of whatever had transpired. "What did you say to him?" I asked, torn between relief and apprehension. "I explained certain realities," Dante replied, resuming his seat, and made it clear that his continued good health depends on his acceptance of those realities. "Will he listen?" Dante's eyes met mine. "He will if he's intelligent, and if not." He left the consequence unspoken. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation and social niceties, though I remained hyper-aware of Dante beside me. of his hand occasionally brushing mine, of the protective way he positioned himself between me and the rest of the room. It was nearly midnight when we finally left, Dante's hand at the small of my back as we made our way to where Marco waited with the car. The night air was cool against my heated skin, the stars barely visible above the city lights. "Are you all right?" Dante asked as Marco drove us home, his voice gentle in the darkened car. "I think so," I said, my emotions too complex to fully articulate. Seeing Ryan was jarring. "He won't approach you again," Dante assured me. "How can you be so certain?" In the dim light, I saw Dante's expression harden, "Because I made it clear that you are under my protection now, that any threat to you would be considered a direct challenge to me." His hand found mine in the darkness. "And because men like Ryan are cowards at heart. They only threaten those they believe can't fight back." His fingers were warm around mine, the contact grounding me. I should have withdrawn, maintained the boundaries between us. Instead, I turned my hand to lace my fingers with his, needing the connection. When we arrived home, Dante walked me to my room rather than stopping at the stairs. At my door, he released my hand, that careful distance reasserting itself. "Thank you for tonight," I said softly. "For everything." "Sleep well, Emma," he replied, his eyes searching mine for a long moment before he turned and walked away. I entered my room, closing the door behind me with a soft click. The woman in the mirror looked transformed, not just by the dress or the elegant styling, but by something deeper. A certainty I hadn't possessed before. For the first time since fleeing Ryan, I felt truly safe. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something dangerously close to hope. 3 weeks passed with startling speed, each day falling into patterns I never expected to find comforting. Mornings with coffee in the garden when weather permitted, or in the library when it didn't. Afternoons exploring the city with Marco as my silent, watchful driver. Evenings with Dante, sharing dinner and conversation that grew increasingly personal as the days went by. Ryan had vanished from my life as completely as if he'd never existed. Whatever Dante had said to him that night at the restaurant had been effective. No more questions around town, no more unexpected appearances. The relief was profound, though I remained cautious out of habit. I began accompanying Dante to various functions, restaurant openings, gallery events, even a charity auction where he bid an obscene amount on a painting neither of us particularly liked, simply because the cause supported children's education. We never discussed an end date to our arrangement, and I found myself not wanting to ask, afraid of breaking whatever spell had transformed my desperate flight into something that increasingly felt like belonging. It was after one such evening, a small dinner party at the home of a business associate Dante had described as mostly legitimate, that something changed between us. We'd returned home late, the autumn night crisp with the promise of winter. Sophia had left a fire burning in the sitting room and a bottle of wine breathing on the side table. "A nightcap?" Dante offered, loosening his tie as he moved to pour the wine. I nodded, slipping off the heels that had been pinching my feet all evening. The burgundy dress from our first outing had been joined by others equally beautiful, but tonight I'd worn a simple black sheath that Sophia had assured me was elegantly understated. "You were quiet in the car," Dante observed, handing me a glass of deep red wine before taking a seat beside me on the sofa, closer than usual, the careful distance he maintained slowly eroding with each passing day. I took a sip before answering, gathering my thoughts. I was thinking about how strange all this is. 3 weeks ago I was living in a motel room, counting pennies and jumping at shadows. Now I'm attending dinner parties with people who own private islands. "Is that a complaint?" Dante asked, his tone light, but his eyes serious. "No," I admitted, just, an observation. Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Or perhaps you're finally living the life you deserve," he suggested. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "I doubt I've done anything to deserve all this." I gestured vaguely at the luxurious surroundings, the expensive dress, the wine probably worth more than a week's pay at any job I'd ever held. Dante studied me over the rim of his glass. "You survived, Emma. You refused to be broken. That deserves reward. Is that what this is? A reward?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Despite weeks of kindness, of growing closeness. I still didn't fully understand his motivations. "No," he said after a moment. "This is something else entirely." The weight of unspoken words hung between us, charged with possibilities neither of us had dared to voice. I set my wine glass on the table, suddenly needing clarity more than comfort. "What is this, Dante? Really? We've been playing this game for weeks, pretending for others. But here now, just the two of us. What are we doing?" He set his own glass down, turning to face me fully. "What do you want us to be doing, Emma?" The question caught me off guard. In all our interactions, Dante had been the one in control, setting boundaries, establishing parameters. Now he was asking me to define things, to take the lead in a dance I barely understood the steps to. "I want..." The words caught in my throat. What did I want? Safety? Yes. Freedom from fear. But there was more. A growing need I'd been trying to ignore. A pull toward this dangerous man who had shown me nothing but respect and protection. "I want to stop pretending." Something shifted in his expression. A softening around the eyes, a tension releasing from his shoulders. "Pretending what exactly? That this is just an arrangement? That I'm just here for protection? That I don't..." I faltered, courage failing. Dante moved closer, still not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "That you don't what, Emma?" His voice had dropped lower, a velvet rumble that sent shivers across my skin. "That I don't feel something for you," I whispered, finally giving voice to the truth I'd been avoiding. For a long moment, he said nothing, his dark eyes searching mine. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached out to brush a strand of hair from my face, his fingertips grazing my cheek in a touch so gentle it almost undid me. "I brought you here for your protection," he said quietly. "I told myself it was practical, that your association with me would serve a purpose. But the truth is far simpler and far more complicated." His hand cradled my cheek, warm and slightly calloused against my skin. "I wanted you close, Emma, from the moment you chose me in that club. From the moment you trusted me enough to seek safety in my arms. I wanted you where I could see you. Protect you. Know you." The confession stole my breath. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you were vulnerable, running from one man who tried to control you." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "I refuse to be another cage, even a gilded one." "You're not," I whispered, leaning into his touch. "You never were." Something fierce flashed in his eyes. "Are you certain? Because once I stop pretending, Emma, there's no going back. I am not a man who loves halfway." The word hung between us, love, neither of us having dared to name it until now. The intensity in his gaze should have frightened me. The possessiveness in his tone should have sent me running. Instead, I felt a sense of rightness, of coming home after being lost for so long. "I don't want halfway," I said, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "I want all of you, Dante. The truth of you." His control, that careful restraint he'd maintained since the night we met, finally broke. In one fluid movement, he pulled me to him, his mouth capturing mine in a kiss that was both question and answer. His lips were firm yet gentle, demanding yet giving, and I melted into him as if I'd been waiting for this moment my entire life. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, his forehead rested against mine, his hands framing my face as if I were something precious. "I've wanted to do that since the night you sat on my lap," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. I smiled, my hands resting on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palm. "Why did you wait so long?" "Because I needed you to choose me again," he said simply, "not out of fear or necessity, but because you wanted me as I want you." The admission struck me deeply. This powerful man who commanded fear and respect, who could have taken what he wanted at any time, had waited for me to come to him freely. It was a kind of respect I'd never experienced before. "I choose you," I whispered against his lips. "Today. Tomorrow. For as long as you'll have me." His answering kiss was deeper, hungrier, his arms wrapping around me to pull me firmly against him. I surrendered to the sensation, to the safety and danger of being in his arms, to the contradiction that was loving a man like Dante. When his lips moved to my neck, trailing fire along my skin, I gasped, my fingers tangling in his hair to keep him close. "Dante?" He pulled back slightly, his eyes dark with desire but still watchful, still careful with me. Too fast? I shook my head. Not fast enough. Something primal flashed in his gaze. In one smooth movement, he stood, pulling me up with him. "Not here," he said, his voice a low growl that sent heat pooling low in my stomach. "I want to take my time with you." He led me upstairs, past my room to the master suite at the end of the hall, a space I'd never entered, his private domain. The room was masculine yet elegant, dominated by a massive bed with charcoal sheets and a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. As the door closed behind us, Dante's restraint returned, his movements slowing as he turned to face me. "We can stop at any time," he assured me, his hands gentle as they framed my face. "You set the pace, Emma." In answer, I reached for the zipper of my dress, slowly drawing it down. The black fabric pooled at my feet, leaving me in only the delicate undergarments Sophia had somehow known to include in my wardrobe. Dante's eyes darkened as they traveled over me, appreciation and hunger evident in his gaze. "Beautiful," he murmured, his hands hovering just above my skin as if asking permission to touch. I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "Your turn," I whispered, my fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. He remained still, allowing me to undress him at my own pace. Each revealed inch of his olive skin was a revelation. Powerful muscles, scattered scars that told stories of a violent past, a tattoo over his heart in Italian script I couldn't translate. When we were both bare before each other, vulnerable in our nakedness, Dante gathered me in his arms, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that felt like coming home. He laid me on his bed with a reverence that brought tears to my eyes, his body covering mine like a shield against the world. "I'll never let anyone hurt you again," he vowed against my skin, his hands and lips exploring every inch of me with exquisite care. I arched beneath him, surrendering to the sensations he evoked. I know. When he finally joined his body with mine, the connection was more than physical, a claiming, yes, but also a giving. Dante, always in control, allowed himself to be vulnerable with me in ways I suspected he rarely permitted. And I, who had learned to fear a man's touch, found healing in the tender worship of his hands. We moved together, finding a rhythm that spoke of possession and surrender, of protection and trust. When pleasure finally overtook me, Dante's name fell from my lips like a prayer, his answering groan as he followed me over the edge, the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Afterward, he held me close, my head resting on his chest where I could hear the steady beat of his heart. His fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder, his breathing slowly returning to normal. "I've never brought anyone to this room," he said quietly into the darkness, "not even for a night." The admission sent warmth blooming through me. "Why me?" He shifted, propping himself up to look down at me, his expression serious in the moonlight filtering through the windows. "Because from the moment you chose me, something inside me recognized you as mine to protect, to cherish." His fingers brushed my cheek. "I've built walls around myself for years, Emma. Necessary walls that kept me alive, kept my family safe. But with you, they crumble." I reached up to touch his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "Does that frighten you?" "Terrifies me," he admitted with unexpected honesty. "You are the only vulnerability I've allowed myself in a very long time. I would never use that against you, I promised." His smile was gentle. "I know. It's why I can love you." And the word, spoken directly now, wrapped around me like a blanket. "I love you too," I whispered, the truth of it settling deep in my bones. Dante pulled me closer, his arms a shelter I never wanted to leave. "Sleep," he murmured against my hair. "I'll be here when you wake." I drifted off in his embrace, more secure than I'd ever felt in my life. Morning brought golden light streaming through the windows and the unfamiliar sensation of waking in someone's arms. Dante was already awake, his dark eyes watching me with a tenderness that made my heart swell. "Good morning," he said softly, brushing hair from my face. "Morning," I replied, suddenly shy despite the intimacy we'd shared the night before. He seemed to sense my uncertainty, his hand rubbing soothing circles on my back. "No regrets." "None," I assured him, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. You. Only that I waited so long to tell you how I feel. He shifted, pulling me up so we were face to face. I meant what I said last night, Emma. I love you. I want you here, with me. Not as part of an arrangement or for protection, but because it's where you choose to be. The sincerity in his voice wrapped around me like a warm embrace. I choose you, I said simply. This. Us. His smile, rare and genuine, transformed his face, softening the edges of power and danger that usually defined him. He leaned forward to capture my lips in a kiss that promised more, his hand sliding down my bare back to pull me closer. We were interrupted by a knock at the door, followed by Sophia's voice. Mr. Dante? There's an urgent call. Dante sighed, pressing his forehead against mine for a moment before responding. I'll be right there, Sophia. He kissed me once more before reluctantly leaving the bed, pulling on pants and a shirt with efficient movements. At the door, he paused, looking back at me tangled in his sheets. We'll continue this conversation later, he promised, his eyes dark with intent. After he left, I lay in his bed for a while, savoring the scent of him on the pillows, the warmth where he had been. Eventually, I wrapped myself in his discarded shirt and padded back to my room to shower and dress for the day. When I came downstairs, Dante was in his study, the door ajar. I paused outside, hearing the tail end of what sounded like a tense conversation. I don't care what it takes, he was saying, his voice hard in a way I rarely heard directed at his men. Find out who's responsible and deal with it. Immediately. There was a pause, then. No. I want this handled quietly. And Marco? No one comes near this house. Double the security. Effective now. My stomach tightened with apprehension. I knocked lightly on the door frame, and Dante looked up, his expression immediately softening when he saw me. Come in, he invited, setting down his phone. I was just finishing. I entered cautiously, noting the tension in his shoulders, despite his attempt to appear relaxed. Is everything all right? He hesitated, clearly debating how much to tell me. We'd shared our bodies, our hearts. But this was his business, the dangerous world he inhabited that I'd only glimpsed from the edges. There's been a situation, he finally said, gesturing for me to sit in one of the chairs across from his desk. Nothing for you to worry about, but I may need to go out of town for a day or two. Because of Ryan? I asked, fear clutching at my throat. No, Dante assured me quickly. Ryan is no longer a concern. This is business. Internal matters that require my personal attention. I studied him, sensing there was more he wasn't telling me. Is it dangerous? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Most things in my life carry an element of risk, but I'm very good at what I do, Emma. He reached across the desk to take my hand. I'll be back before you can miss me. I doubt that, I said softly, squeezing his fingers. I already miss you when you leave a room. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, then a warmth that made my breath catch. He rose from his chair, coming around the desk to pull me to my feet and into his arms. When I return, he murmured against my hair, we have decisions to make, about us, about the future. I looked up at him, heart racing with possibility. What kind of decisions? His hand cradled my face, thumb brushing my cheek. Whether you move your things into my room permanently, whether we make this, us, official in ways that matter in my world. Are you proposing? I asked, only half joking. Dante's expression turned serious. Not yet. But I am asking you to consider what it would mean to be truly mine, Emma. Not as part of an arrangement, not for protection, but as my partner in all things. His eyes held mine. It won't always be easy. My life comes with complications, dangers, but I promise you this. You will always be my priority. Your safety, your happiness. The magnitude of what he was offering, not just love, but a complete integration into his world, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a sense of rightness, of pieces finally falling into place. I don't need time to consider it, I said, standing on tiptoe to brush my lips against his. I choose you, Dante, all of you. The good and the dangerous, the light, and the dark. He kissed me then, deep and possessive, his arms tightening around me as if he could somehow keep me safe through sheer force of will. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, his expression was fierce with emotion. 2 days, he promised. Then we begin our life together properly. I nodded, already counting the hours until his return. I'll be waiting. He left that afternoon, after hours spent showing me exactly how much he would miss me. Marco drove him away, but Alessio remained, along with 2 other men I'd seen occasionally but never been introduced to. The house felt emptier without Dante's presence, though Sofia did her best to keep me company. That night, I slept in Dante's bed, surrounded by his scent, dreaming of the future we would build together. A future I never could have imagined when I'd first sat on the lap of a dangerous stranger to escape another threat entirely. Sometimes salvation came in unexpected forms. Sometimes safety meant choosing the most dangerous option. Sometimes love grew in the shadows, stronger for the darkness it had overcome. Dante returned exactly when he promised, appearing in the doorway of his bedroom where I sat reading, waiting for him. There was a small cut above his eye that hadn't been there when he left, but his smile when he saw me was bright enough to chase away any questions about what had happened while he was gone. "You're here," he said simply, crossing the room to gather me in his arms. "Where else would I be?" I replied, breathing him in, my hands checking him for other injuries with gentle exploration. "I'm fine," he assured me, capturing my wandering hands and bringing them to his lips. "And whatever needed handling has been handled." I nodded, not needing details. This was his world, and I had chosen to be part of it, the good and the bad, the safety and the danger. "Sofia has dinner waiting," I told him, pulling him toward the door. "And afterward," his eyes darkened with promise, "afterward, we begin the rest of our lives. Hand in hand, we descended the stairs, no longer predator and prey, protector and protected, but partners in a life neither of us had expected, but both now chose with our whole hearts. Sometimes the most dangerous choice turns out to be the only one worth making. And sometimes, sitting on a mafia boss's lap to avoid your ex leads to the kind of love stories only exist in dreams. I had run from one cage only to willingly enter another, but this one had no locks, no chains, only the bonds of love, respect, and a promise whispered against my skin that first night. Trust me, I won't let him hurt you. Dante had kept that promise, and everyone since, and I would spend the rest of my life keeping mine, to love him, to choose him every single day.